Okay, we are back. This is Senate Committee on Institutions. Today's Tuesday, April 14th, 2026, and we're on our second item, which is the State House entryway project. And we have several folks. I'm going to just take in order unless there's another order that you all prefer. So we'd start with Agatha Chesler.
That's right, yeah.
Arms, if you are ready. And so this is a project that we've been working on for a few years, and it is actually being implemented, and its funding is bonding, capital bonding. So we are here to learn more.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agatha Kessler, Sergeant Arms for the record, and I'm joined by Joe Aja from BGS, Deputy Commissioner from BGS, Sean from Freeman French Freeman, and Chief Polway and Cole for BGS. And actually Tim German, who's here as, I think, citizen, but representative of the Capitol Complex Commission, which is one of the commissions that has is a stakeholder in this project. So I can kick us off. We did a short presentation, I think, on the entryway project earlier in the year. The bill or the project was not included in the capital bill. The governor's recommend. It was written in on House Corrections and Institutions. Wrote it in for $1.3 million, and that would request would allow the project to continue into the next phase in the next fiscal year. It is the total project estimate is $18.6 million. That's the quick overview. I think the next slide, I'm turning it over to Joe.
Isn't it more than that though, isn't it? We have estimates as far as the 18.6, but all the way to 22 and then all the way to 30, depending on how much you want to do. Like with the Senate exit and all of that stuff. So let's be using the numbers all the way to the top so that we can make sure that everybody fully understanding that this project could be $30 million and not 18.6.
Well, I'd be happy to give a little history on the evolution of this project to explain some of those things that Senator Ingalls has brought up.
Sure.
Okay. So the project was first approved, I believe, in 2023 by a special committee, and it was an $11 million project at that time, and it had a lot of components, including a fire escape for the Senate chamber, a transition from the second floor of the annex to the cafeteria, which would allow for that external fire escape to be taken off. There are lots of components of the project. When we designed that and brought it back to JLMC, the special committee, it was a $25 million project. So we were sent back to the redesign, and bring it down. So we eliminated some of the components that were not essential. And it's arguable what's essential, because I know the committee had the interest in the fire escape, but we focused it just on the entryway and the corridor that connects to the Lincoln hallway. That brought it back down to an $18.6 million project. So that's what we're working with. There are lots of components that have been discussed over the last 3 years. And with the team, we can address some of the questions about the components that have been taken off the project, including the Senate fire escape. But that's where some of these numbers come from. So we are trying to stay within this $18.6 million project estimate.
Okay, and just one second. Just let me say, I do have concerns about the fire escape being deleted and any other fire escapes or fire safety related items. It's not just the Senate that I'm concerned with, but safety first, right? So any of you who speak, please address that if that's part of your purview. Senator Major.
First of all, I want to thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to commend you on thinking about the House, their safety. There's well, so
And the public.
Look at you. Is your plan to add back in the items that were deleted at a later date, or is this what's the grand plan? Point is this going? Yes, this is with this, but at a later date, you can come back and ask for more money.
So I'm happy to speak on behalf of the design team, but I also would like to offer to BGS to answer any of these questions. This is a BGS led project. So I'm happy to answer on behalf of the team, but also would like to give the opportunity for BGS to chime in.
Sure. For the record, Joe Ager, Director of Design and Construction with Buildings and General Services. Now I run to a slide that's slowly catching up here to give you a better idea of the floor plan that we are presently looking at and what we're doing. And on the top left-hand side is what's known today as the loading dock area. And the single point of entry as of today. And so what you're looking at is an expansion of that area to create a true single point of entry for anybody coming into the building to be processed in one form or another, whether it's for a pandemic like we've had COVID, or for security processing, the likes of that. But it also provides for access to the back of the house, and that's really at the top left-hand side of that screen. That runs you through sort of a long corridor to the elevator, and that can directly go up to the cafeteria. So that would be that access for cafeteria and also for operations and maintenance and facilities hauling the trash out. So that, so you're not in the public way as pretty much you are today. And then it extends as you continue to the right-hand side of the screen. You're going through what is an open area. Right now, there's a set of stairs as you come in the vestibule. And just inside of that vestibule is a set of stairs that takes you to the mezzanine. All that stairway comes out and that area opens up. It takes you into what is the courtyard. There'll be a roof extending all the way from the new construction down to the arch. And so that now becomes all interior. And the thought process here is that you get screened and you continue down through that new corridor into the Lincoln hallway. And the arch, I can show you another one here. All right, I'll let it know. It's a glass under the arch, it's glass enclosure. So it creates its vestibule. So if you're going to the speakers edition of the backstairs and or to where Bushland Lounge was, council, and then enter the Lincoln Town. So it's still another point of entry for non-visitors, people like yourself who have badge access to get into that doors. But that is where the typical floor and what we're looking at. Back in the original design and the forethought here is in the L down by where the Senate is, and room 9 was looking to create a stair tower in that location for a second means of egress off the second floor and coming out of the Senate chamber. Because right now the Senate chamber really doesn't have the second means of egress. You go over to the cloakroom and I think it's a Senate secretary on the other side. But you basically end up right at the main door going into the chamber anyway. So that was one of the things that we looked at. I want to say it didn't go over well because you were blocking some of the community room on this floor. Also, room 9, also looking into the House chamber itself. Even though there was thought of trying to do as much of a glass enclosure as possible to allow some of that light in, it still didn't go over well. But as Sergeant Irons has said, when we're looking at a $25 million project, there were cuts. And that was one of the items that did get cut because it was not about the entryway. And that is where all of this started from, with the ARPA funds of creating a entryway that is accessible and also for screening.
So can you talk about fire code and what would be required?
I'm going to defer to the architect on that. He's done more of the homework on that than I have.
Can I just follow up on the senator's question about like the plans to add things back in?
Oh.
So right now, you know, the funding request, or the funding from the House that's before you is to fund continuation of design work, moving from schematic design, which is kind of what we're looking at here, to move into construction documents for this. it does not include additional elements, nor is that part of the existing plan currently to add on fire escape or other elements. So the $18.6 million that we're talking about, which is an estimate at this point in time, is for this. And those other elements would have to, if there was a desire to add those additional elements, they would come separately, or they'd have to be explicitly included in an expansion, but they're not part of what's before you now, that sort of.
So we haven't even appropriated any money for this, but we're already going to as if we're constructing this project. And so any other additional changes, was gonna have to go back through and to have, because it's all connected. So any other additional changes are gonna probably put another $1 million worth of design changes in there, or whatever that number would be, because you've gone to actually construction documents, but now that we're gonna change it, we have to go right back to drawing board again. And probably looking at another $1 million or whatever it's gonna be to get back to the design, to incorporate those changes in, should there be any made.
Changes to the design, to this sort of schematic conceptual design, yes, would increase design costs if they were going to be incorporated now, or if they were going to be a standalone project at some later point in time. Then you could have separate design costs associated with that.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
I guess I just bothered that we're past the part of conceptualizing it. And we're actually going as if we have appropriated monies to do the project. And we're a long ways from that. And so I can see a lot more expense before we even get to that. That's what I'm bothered with. All right.
so what my understanding is that this is the project at this point.
That's correct.
And whether it's a phase one or whether it's phase none, or the only phase, this project is what we're talking about, right now. I have questions about fire safety and other things, but, this is it designed completely, or how far along are we? That's what but this is the project that we're talking about, not all of the other potentials, right?
Do you have the timeline slide? So this has gone through the schematic design process. The $1.3 million that's in the House passed version moves this project to continue the design work for the project we were just looking at to construction documents. It doesn't fund actual groundbreaking or any construction work. It's finalizing the design process so that you'd be then in a place in a future session where you're, appropriating money towards the actual construction work. You'd have finalized documents that are essentially ready to go.
And they're ready to bid, basically, ready to be used for someone to bid. Yes.
So we're down this road before where we're gonna put a second story on the cafeteria. And we decided that was gonna be too expensive, or whatever was decided, it didn't move forward. But I think we expended a $1.5 million to get to that point. Is any of that money recoverable? Do we have any of those dollars left over that we didn't move forward?
The dollars that we spent on it was not that expensive. It was all part of our programming in advance. And those funds have been expended, but we still have ARPA funds remaining that we will be using going forward in the construction document phase. However, the ARPA funds project ends at December 31st of this year. So that money goes away if we haven't used it. So we basically have to expend those funds. And I have a slide that shows how much money is remaining in ARPA funds. And then that is why we are asking for the 1.3 million to finish or to supplement the construction document phase.
So it's gonna be more than $1.3 million because you're gonna use some of the remaining ARPA funds left over?
Yes,
Okay, and how much? I mean, what's the total dollar amount? It's right on the slide.
we are looking at, well, let me get to the slide that shows dollars. So in here, what I have is we got a balance of $243,447 of ARPA funds remaining. And then in FY24, there was $150,000 in cash that was given to this project. And we have $103,196 remaining in the cash fund. And then we're asking for the 1.3 million to do that. Now, part of that, that's not all design. We're looking to hire a construction manager, bring them in for part of the pre-construction phase of this to help us through that design to make sure what we're looking at doing is going to work, because scheduling of this project is going to be a nightmare at best. About how to we, like, for example, the mezzanine, that stairway to the mezzanine. Once that's gone, or we dig inside the loading dock, that whole entryway goes away. How does anybody get into the building at that point in time? And how do we best sequence that? That's what our construction manager is going to do to help us during the design phase, to sort of lay that out with the architect and have that planning so that we know what we're doing going forward. And then any of the additional work that we may have to do for, temporary accessible access to the building. Where are we going to do that during that time frame, and how we're going to do it? All that comes into play also during that. We're also going to be hiring somebody to do commissioning. So we bring them on early also. We typically do it at the end of schematic design. And so we're right at that point in time that once we're done schematic design, we'll be hiring those two individuals teams to come in. And what the commissioning agent does is also start reviewing what the architect and engineers put together and adding their 2 cents as to what they see is good or bad in that design, what they might have missed, what they should consider. And then later on, they actually go through and commission any of the moving parts, basically. Most of it is mechanical, but it can go into some of the endorsements can be by the play and block functions. Typically, we don't go that deep, but that's what commissioning would be. So that's what those 1.3 million is for.
And if I could just add, this is the amount of money that we determined in collaboration with the Sergeant at Arms would be needed to move the project forward in the desired timeline using a phased construction approach. So again, this wasn't in the governor's recommend, but we did identify that if this is moving forward on the timeline that's desired, this would be needed now in order to move forward and keep the schedule.
And I apologize, the timeline with construction would be when?
We are looking here as the bottom row, as you're looking at sort of the funding period. The funding period is also roughly the same time you go home in mid-May, June. That's when construction would start, and then you would be back in ready to go January 1st. So it's really about how much work we can get done during the summer, fall, before we get into it and come back, and what temporary items we have to have in place to get you access to the building for not only you and the public and everything else. What that looks like right now, no idea. The architect and construction manager will come up with all that enabling work that has to be done to fit this project in. And then it looks, we're going to be doing it over.
And the other complications could be that by that time we get FEMA funding back in and we start to work down here, which is probably going to be $200 million or whatever that number is going to be. And so, we've done enough work with FEMA to know that they don't 100% fund any projects. And so we could be very much looking at 10 or 20% worth of dollars needed down there, to actually complete buildings, get them back to where they need to be, not on new projects, but just to restore old buildings. So very, very troubling, very problematic.
FEMA of this building, is that what you're talking about?
No,
Because FEMA is
What
the other building.
it is likely that there would be work currently happening in the Capitol complex at the same time frame that this project,
Right.
the timeline for this project. So yes, Senator, it's very likely that there would be concurrent work that could include some capital funding needs for the rest of the complex.
Did you ask?
Yes, Senator Engels earlier mentioned something about project. I had no idea about a second floor to the cafeteria. Is that some other project that has nothing to do with any of this money? And so Senator Engels' question was there any of that money left?
Yes, that was part of the ARPA funds. A part of that second floor that is mentioned here, this is not the rendering that would show that. What we had is basically a 3-story addition. And what that addition was looking at
I
at
mean,
the
you know the
time,
details, but the answer was,
yes,
it was the ARPA funds that were,
yes,
that some of that was expended, that's the rest of the ARPA funds.
Correct.
Can I
But,
put the
but
follow-up
we didn't
clarify
do that. Just to be clear.
Sarah, was your cafeteria question the one that was from like 20 years ago? That
No,
cafeteria or
no.
recent?
When I was
Because-
chair here, we were talking about putting a second story on the cafeteria, and we have expended dollars for that. We had it several different times, $750,000 monies, and I think that they added another $750,000. So we're looking at $1.5 million that were kind of being used for the same situation that we're talking now. We were actually getting to the point of doing the plans. We had to bring the French Freeman in as well, and I believe that they were the architect of that plan. So it's not the first rodeo that we've been down this route where we're trying to talk about doing some expansions off of the State House. And then it does get down to the appetite of what the public is going to allow us to do. And knowing full well that we're gonna have other capital projects within the capital complex to finish up the FEMA part of it, makes me very nervous to go back and try to sell to my constituents another $18 to $30 million project of adding on to the State House when we have other needs that we're gonna need that money for.
Yes, and to follow up on that, you are 100% correct. The State House and its space has been studied for decades. And the findings of all of those reports are conclusive. And in summary, they say that there are no underutilized spaces in the State House. It's been studied by French Freeman multiple times. There are no underutilized spaces in the State House. And
I could probably take you, not to argue with you,
No.
but I could probably take you upstairs and show you quite a few rooms up there that are being used as house lounges, that could be committee rooms that are underutilized spaces.
I would actually ask the architect to address that because that has been studied in terms of the size of those committee rooms and that they're inadvisable to be used as committee rooms.
They'd be great Senate committee rooms. They're bigger than any rooms that we have here.
Okay, that's a different conversation. And I remember the conversation about the cafeteria, and it was it's a second floor of the cafeteria, so it's the third floor. That's why it's a little confusing. But we ended up not. I believe that's not in our plans now. I mean, I know it's not in these plans. I don't know if we have long-term plans for the building.
we do not.
Okay, so this is all we have that is officially our intent.
Yes,
That's accurate?
yes.
Okay, and then Joe, I thought you said, I mean, this has a schedule.
Yes, it does.
And so it looks like, that it would be done right before the 2030 session is the plan.
That is correct.
Okay,
But the work, the actual construction work is during the off season. of the
right.
legislature. Yes,
So you've done this well, where you have chunks of
Yes.
time when you work and then chunks of time when we work.
yes.
Okay. All right. Think that's helpful? So, anybody have general or financial questions? Because I have some specific questions. Or why don't you all, is there more you want to tell us?
There were some more slides.
Okay.
That shows the ideas and
Yes.
I'll probably switch seats with the architect so that you can walk through those slides.
Sure. Yeah.
Sean Brennan with Freeman French Freeman.
Thank you for being here. And you've been here before, right? So do you know, well, we can introduce, I'm Wendy Harrison and I represent the Wyndham District Southeast Vermont.
Rob Plunkett. Thanks.
Joel Major Windsor.
Russ Ingles, Essex,
John Vincent Orange.
That's up to my section.
and Essex County. Yes.
No, but I'm from Vermont, my family's from Orleans. How nice. So close by.
Yeah, very nice.
But, yes, actually, I wanted to first address your question about, like, say,
Okay,
because that's what we're licensed for. That's paramount on our minds.
great.
So everything we're touching is being brought up to code. There are
Okay,
a lot of code deficiencies in the various aspects of the building. The fire marshals allow that, given other things are being addressed, meaning you're deficient in this area, but you're doing this instead, and they're letting that happen until a project happens. So we will bring everything up to meet code, current code. And part of it is because this building is very old. When it was built, there were no codes. So you're grandfathered in until you actually do something. And then you have to address that unless it's a dire issue. So what we're doing with the new entry is we're touching the area, as you saw in the northwest corner of the building, where the elevator is and that exits there. That stair doesn't currently meet code. That was built to be a fire exit stair. It's fully enclosed, but it does not exit outside, which is required by code.
Do you mind if I just ask a question while you're, so is that the stairway that's in the back that is actually a pretty modern stairway?
Correct.
Okay,
So it is enclosed, it is rated for fire, but it does not exit outside.
Okay.
So that's a thing that's in violation of code.
So, Mr. Brennan, is it in violation of code in a regular, a public building? Does that code also apply to historic buildings?
Yes, it does. They do allow some variation on that, but the code is very strict on exiting. So they allow you to use the mezzanine stair as your exit. They don't really count that stair. They allow the mezzanine, even though that strictly isn't meeting code, but at least it has a direct exit to the outside within visual range. So that's why that one is allowed.
so then the one in the back, you would just be taking out the east or which?
The west wall.
South, or is it the west? This wall, right?
What we'd be doing is, instead of coming out into the corridor to the right, as you look at the plan.
Yeah,
When you exit, you'll be going to the left down the corridor directly outside, and that will be a fire rated corridor.
good,
So everyone exiting the cafeteria has a safe means to get directly outside.
great. So how about other parts of it?
So the other things we did do as part of this project, because we are touching those areas, are limiting the area of the buildings by creating fire rated separations. Because you are limited in the amount of space that you're able to have for a building based on your construction type and your occupancy. So we've analyzed those, and we cannot make a situation worse. So by adding square footage, we have to account for that by creating separations. Meaning this area is counted separately and our area is counted separately because we've created a fire barrier there. So that means we're allowed to add on because we've limited the amount of area in any one space. So we're addressing that, and we're also addressing wayfinding for ease of entry and exit. So that's what that long corridor down the courtyard is supposed to alleviate. So we're doing that as well.
There's more access.
Correct.
And that you're talking about the courtyard, the new courtyard.
Correct. The atrium, as we call it now, in the courtyard space is meant to also facilitate wayfinding and group orientation so that they're not constantly in the corridor outside your rooms trying to organize a group of people, so
Right.
your students.
It's nice when they're here sometimes, but other times. So I just want to stay on the safety for a bit, because I do have a question about the atrium, but this is just the first floor, it's not the second floor.
Correct. We're only dealing with first floor for our addition.
So safety on the second floor.
Second floor, same stair in the back that we're addressing, so
Right.
it reaches that floor. For the,
Pretty far
from here, yes, this area isn't being touched as part of this project. We did study it, as you all know.
yeah,
And we did have some solutions that would address various issues. But since we're not touching this area, the fire marshal doesn't require that we bring anything up to code at this time.
okay, so if we were bringing something up to code on the second floor, what would we be doing?
So really exiting is the key for this area. We see that as a major issue. The second issue is sprinklers in the chambers. And what we do there we studied it, what we do instead of full action sprinklers, we would do a mist system so that it just mists the cool down in case the fire would buy you time to get out of
get out of those spaces. So those are two things that were addressed as part of the initial project before the cost savings measures were required.
So what are those costs roughly?
Well, all told,
Well, just one of, like, you have two options for fire.
well, they're both required. So
So misting and
correct,
exit.
correct. It's just, you can do them incrementally if the fire marshal allows you to do that, which we had discussions about that.
Okay.
So it's all negotiations.
Where did those discussions lead?
They led to documents that we had produced for schematic design that were priced by the estimator, where we had a stair where Director Asia had said. There were historic preservation concerns about that, given the location, but there were other concerns putting it elsewhere. Mainly, we don't want to put it on a main facade like a gable. So there's very limited areas or on the front, certainly not. So that really was the compromise space. And we could still work that out in those issues, but then it became the cost issue working with the JLNC as far as trying to get something that they would feel was appropriate scale project to be approved.
So what is the cost? If you don't know it now, I would like to know it. I think that's really important.
Well, we knew the cost in the end of 23, I think we were looking at that.
I think we had a breakdown of it, but I don't recall off the top of my head what that was. And
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can give you a rough estimate, and Joe will cringe when I do this. But you have to understand what type of stair it was. So it wasn't a fully conditioned stair. It was just a fire stair. So it was covered, mostly enclosed, but it wasn't heated or cooled or anything like that.
Is it similar to the one that is
On the end
next?
of,
Yeah,
no, that's non-compliant. You can't build like that.
okay.
So it would be protected. It's just not anything fancy.
So it's a little bit more fancy than the one out there.
Covered up and has some sidewalls to it.
Okay,
So that number from a couple of years ago, escalation's gone up quite a bit. But that number at that time was about $200,000.
200,000. Okay. And then what about the sprinklers?
So I do not recall sprinklers, honestly. That's a tough one to know.
We'd have to
because-
do both. Sorry, I didn't check.
No problem.
Like it's all or nothing in this.
You can do it incrementally, as I said. You would negotiate with the fire marshal. They would be very happy to incrementally implement these because it's improving the condition.
Mhm.
Anything we can do that, they're all in on. I'm speaking for them, but I work with them a lot and
Okay,
they're all about safety. So if we can
Yeah.
do things to make it better, they want that. So stair, mist sprinklers, both, anything we can do, they'd be very happy with it.
okay. And the 200,000, was that installed?
That was the stair itself. I will say there's enabling work to make that happen within the interior spaces. Because we have to modify access and then break through walls, do that stuff. That's part of the demo and remodeling cost. That's separate from that new cost that I said.
Okay. So that's the actual just
Just the stairs.
stairs. All right, so it would be helpful to have the full cost.
And we can go back and pull those out.
That would be great. Or and then update them, obviously.
Sure.
Okay. So just if you were here last year, I don't know if you noticed the art. That was the second State House burning.
Yes.
So we have different art now, but we still don't need a third State House burning.
Yeah, absolutely. I've read the history of the state.
Okay.
House. I'm a history buff, so
Oh, perfect.
I'm very familiar with it. And no, we do not want any recurrence of that.
Yes.
Especially speaking selfishly, especially if my stamp is on it with Ron. So
All right, there you
I
go.
do not want any problems.
Self-interest, rightly
Absolutely.
understood. So I guess just to be comprehensive in this, if there are other safety issues that we, or I should say, other similar issues or improvements that we deleted for cost, I would really appreciate knowing those and the cost,
Okay.
and pretty soon too, because we have to make a fair amount of decisions this week.
None come to mind. We are addressing all of those issues like accessibility. You know, that's not a Currently, the building, it does not have great accessibility
Yeah.
for people with disabilities. It's very difficult. So we're addressing
Hard
that.
for, abled people to open those doors.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's code requirements on full strength and all of that.
Yeah, but they're great doors. Just one other thing. With the exit, with the fire, stairs, was that sufficient for the whole, second floor? One staircase?
That was addressing the immediate need of the most egregious problem. There are still other deficiencies. Essentially, in this part of the building, we really don't have a fire stair,
So you're talking on the second floor.
Anywhere.
We have good windows.
but you have no fire stair to exit in this part of the building. So you have the open stairs in the main, feature space.
Yeah.
Those don't qualify. So those are not exit stairs.
Okay, so then please give us all of the safety requirements that that would be recommended by the fire marshal. And I understand, we have limited money. It's historic building, but it's a really important building and we have a lot of public people here. So, it's important. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just so I'm understanding this correctly, if we do any major construction, which I may consider this major construction, we now have to come up to code, fire code, as well as have to be under ADA.
Correct.
So is that included in the monies that 18 they have?
So to reiterate, the areas we're touching have to be brought up.
Right.
So yes, we're meeting energy code, ADA code, and fire code through our construction.
So, but that's included in the 18.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to
Absolutely.
make sure that. And this is just an aesthetic thing. We no longer, and we don't now, but we no longer will have access in any way, shape, or form through the front of the building.
I can answer that. So during session, we plan to maintain a screening posture. Off session, we won't be here. The legislature won't be here. So the front doors will open again as they always do during our tourist season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, is that good? So now not safety, aesthetics, the, atrium area, it, as you know, could really be dark if we're not careful. And, the rooms that now, exit to the, not exit, but have windows to the outside, that, light really is important to them. So are you able to put, glass or something?
Yeah, that's an excellent
Yeah.
question. It's something we've talked about a great deal. There are a lot of physical limitations to that area simply because of think of falling ice and stuff.
Right.
So we have a lot of limitations on how much glass. We will put some skylights in there. That's not going to be our primary illumination. So we have a lighting designer lined up to do the lighting design for this space that will make this a very illuminated area. And not artificially like this. It'll look like it's lit, like daylit. And so that's the intent. And it's a one story, it's a tall story because the windows are tall,
Right.
but it's one story. So the windows above will also have natural lighting.
So there will be windows above
Correct.
or the existing
The
windows.
existing windows for the state house.
You won't have like a transom thing on
No.
the sides.
The first floor will be the one that'll be looking inside the atrium.
Mm.
And those will have views of the day lit artificial lighting.
Okay, and if you have any renderings of that, that would be good. Not necessarily now, but
Sure.
just to get a sense of that, because that's a big deal.
It is, and that's something we're very sensitive to.
Okay. Great. Okay. Anybody else? Questions? Do you want to go through the slides and to the trouble of making the slides? We could go quickly.
Sure. So site is a major issue for this location. It has been studied as to where exactly to put a secure entry or screening entry. And we examined a number of spaces and we always came back to this one. And partly that's why it's used now. It's because there's a certain logic to it The difficulty is there's no big wide open site space left around the State House that can be used for this type of function. So we have to try to do a lot of functions in one space. And Joe mentioned that, which is we're trying to separate deliveries and try to have those off hours. We're separating public entry, which is part of the new entry, versus legislative entry, which is on the east side, so that you don't have to go through the screening process. And then also separate traffic leaving the State House, because you don't want people backflowing through the screening process. So that's part of what we're segmenting this site into. And it is out of the way, and so how do you draw people visually to this as an entry without competing with the existing architecture of the State House and the scale? Obviously, you want to make something giant and blinking neon to grab people's eye because it's way around the corner, but we don't want to do that. So we're trying to do it with shape and with presence. So we also want to make the site a little conducive here. And I understand it's probably very difficult to read, but we are in the early stages of design, and this was a sketch. So what you'll see is you can see the State House. The annex is kind of on the lower right here of the photograph, and the parking lot there, and where the truck is, where the loading dock is right now. So we're moving the truck up towards the upper part in our sketch, away from that zone, up towards the hill. And where that fire stair exits for everyone. That will also be an entrance for deliveries when that's delivery time.
So we just can't have a delivery and a fire.
They'll still be able to.
I'm being sarcastic, I'm sorry.
Well, hopefully they wouldn't be bringing things in a fire.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to do is create a bit of a gathering space outside as well that's iconographically recognizable as an entry for the public who has been and try to recreate some of that entry point steps, not nearly as grand, but still that same feel to recreate that type of architectural feel so people understand where they're going and why.
No, it's a very elegant design. And it is very different from the State House, which is supposed to be to show that it's the new stuff, not the old stuff.
Correct. And sympathetic in that we're using, I based the design on the drum of the dome.
Okay.
It's the same diameter, so it has that familiarity if you pay attention, like textures. But different, same material. We'll use stone, we'll use glass. So we'll keep some things that are familiar, but use them in a different way. And still try to keep that presence that the State House has, but be welcoming, very transparent, so people know where to go. So that's the intent, but the primary function, of course, is screening, and that goes to having the ability to have the security area there before they enter the State House private. So that's our intent. Keep cars away because that's a safety concern as well. You don't want cars parking right next to the building, and also screen people before they get to the inner part of the State House.
Right, and we're getting good practice on how like when we have rain or ice and people are waiting outside, we know that what we have now is not sufficient. And so you kind of know the number of people that you need to have in that vestibule.
Yes. And we've talked with the Sergeant at Arms and the curator a good deal about groups that can help and how to facilitate that so that it's efficient. But you're right. Other thing is protection is personal protection. It's not just life safety. It's how do you keep people from being hit by falling objects off the roof?
Yeah.
Ice falls and that can hurt people.
Right.
And that area isn't great right now for that. So that's what we're trying to resolve as well. So there's a long list of needs and only so many solutions that can work. So that's what we've got right now. That's what's in the budget and that's what's in the design.
Great. Are there other slides or is that the end?
This floor plan. HVAC. The better way here.
Oh, yes. So we know that the HVAC issues in the buildings.
Really?
I've heard.
But it's not, well, our area isn't gonna get changed, right?
So it's currently being upgraded, the whole State House in general. I don't know about this area.
This area stuff.
So this is
Well, we did have we had
Yes,
improvements in the last couple of years. I shouldn't have said
That
it
is
like,
correct.
yes, and,
This has
and
been done for 2 years. Now we're more than house.
we appreciate. it.
Yeah, they're still not done. And the area that's being affected by this is being held off because we don't want to pay to redo work.
Mm.
So we're holding that work to see what happens with this project so that we can just have it built once and make sure it's correct. You know, that's part of this work, but what these drawings are doing, we have our engineers working on the logistics of trying to thread the needle with a lot of new systems, because as you know, it's pretty tight in the back area, because that's where all the utilities are. And so we're working diligently to make room to run new systems so that the areas we create are comfortable.
And this committee actually did a tour, which you might really, your Senator Vincent's new to the committee. We can go down and see all this stuff too. Some of it's underground, some of it's stuff.
Right, and the new construction out by the courtyard.
In years past?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll update. Okay, go ahead.
So that's what this drawing is demonstrating, is that we have a whole group of engineers working to solve a lot of the logistical problems that currently exist and trying not to create new ones, because that's easy to do. And also we know this has been studied a lot. We've studied additions that would enhance your committee room capabilities. We do not want to preclude any future work either. So this also looks to the future as to what we may be able to do with future expansion, should it be needed. So that's baked into this, where we're not making it so that you cannot expand.
Great, thank you. Okay, anything else?
I have some other questions and not directly related to this building in we just got, but I'm trying to get a feel for, if I look at what we've talked about, and I look at your schedule. It's 26 through 29 that we're looking at design and construction here, so money will be being looked to be allocated over that period. And what I recall from some previous testimony, Joe, that you've provided to us, we're still working on what's going to happen with FEMA and all the flood issues with all the state complex buildings. We know we've got a stormwater issue to deal with in the complex. I remember some discussion about AC issues and parking. So what I'm trying to get a feel of as we look at needs. What are we looking at when we're talking about all these other projects in terms of capital needs and schedule? Because some of these are going to all come in the same period of time, and there's only so much money. And so just trying to get a feel for that bigger picture as we look at this project. And we can't look at this project just completely in isolation, but how do all these other pieces here in the complex fall into that?
So it's hard to say with specificity right now because we don't yet have an offer from FEMA finalized on what our 428 funding will look like. We're hoping to have more clarity on that very soon, where we can have a better understanding of what's being funded federally, what a state share might look like, and what additional, if any, capital funding the state may want to put in at the same time for flood related work. But yes, you've heard some testimony around like 120 with the AC work. We're trying to see again what we're going to have from FEMA so that we can achieve some efficiencies, hopefully when we're doing the work in the complex. So I can't give you a specific number of what additional capital needs we might be looking at based on that flood recovery work. However, it's fair to say that it will be a consideration of possible pressure on the capital bill for future years, again, depending on what that final FEMA offer looks like and what the legislature and administration think should any additional work or state share should look like. So again, I can't give you a number other than to say it's definitely a factor that it could impact future capital bills, as well as all of the other projects that we have in flight, you know, some very significant projects with funding needs that you're aware of that are part of this year's budget adjustment already, specifically in like the corrections space, judiciary as well. So, you know, we have some big projects out there in the complex and otherwise.
And we do outside of that as well. If we're gonna start school construction again, if we're gonna build a women's facility again. And already when you look at the pressures of the capital bill right now, it's not at any fault of the chair's ability to lead this committee. She's doing a fine job. But we're looking at what she's got to spend versus what we have in the years past. And we are probably at least bouncing off of $100 million less and from 2 years ago to what we are right now. And so the pressures are there already. And so we need to be very mindful of all of that.
And just about priorities for capital projects. One thing that I had sort of expected to hear more about here was just basically fundamental safety for the public and legislators in this building. Because this entryway seems to actually create some sort of security here. And I know there are a lot of us that are concerned about this, people following people. Is that part of the consideration here, why we're doing it now versus another time?
Yes.
I'm looking to Sergeant Mars and the chief.
Let's speak to that. I'm happy to. So as I said, this space has been studied at least 4 times in the last 5 years, just from our architectural component. There's equal number of security assessments that have been done on the building, and unanimously, it is security screening is the #1 best way to protect the occupants of this building. And we say occupants because it's not to protect the legislators exclusively, it's to protect all of the people in this building, including the hundreds of thousands of school children that come here. It's the #1 most visited school site in the state. Right now, Chief and I have figured out a way to execute security screening in a loading dock. It is hazardous. Just last week, we had somebody taken by ambulance who tripped and fell in the loading dock. It is the architect, Sean, she's saying the architect, Sean identified falling ice, it's exposed, it's where our deliveries come in. The ground is very tricky to navigate. It is not a courteous way to invite people into the state house. It is not a safe way to invite people into the state house.
Has anyone been hit by a truck back there? Because we're in the ag committee and we're watching this go every day. And I don't drive a truck, but backing up into a line of people.
Yes.
But
no one has been hit to my knowledge. But we get several complaints about the exhaust of the trucks that are backing up and floating up into the community spaces. So, you know, it's been studied, and the experts in all fields, security, architectural, unanimously come to the conclusion that we need an entryway. So I hope that answers your question.
It does.
But this project is a priority for the Sergeant at Arms office. It's a priority for the Capitol Police Department. It is about access, ADA access. We owe it at the People's House. We owe it to People Vermont to invite them into the building in a respectful, courteous, and safe way. And it is about security for the building and for the occupants of the building.
Okay, good question.
What lot do you park in, so I know we're not picking?
I avoid you at all times. You do not want me backing up the truck.
There's schools for it.
And just one final point on that is it is very hard, I know, for legislators to vote for a project on their office. This is your office. This project creates no space for legislators. This is not about bigger committee rooms. This is not about a bigger cafeteria. This project is 100% a project for the public, the people of Vermont.
All right. Thank you. All right, I think this is good. And does anyone else want to say anything? Okay. All right, well, thank you very much, and please do get the information.
Okay, no,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
All right,
You'll like Brendan, or,
let's go offline.
That's my dad's name.